Now to look at how far we've come since that event, exactly 50 years ago, I'm joined by Raoul Hodges from the South African National Space Agency. Thank you so much for joining us, Raoul. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
I mean, exactly 50 years ago, we saw Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. I mean, records show that approximately 650 million people from around the world witnessed this moment in history. What is the significance of this day today?
Well, I think we have to look back at the history and first of all, what South Africans' role was in the moon landing and getting people there. If you look at the technology that has grown since 1969 to now, to make spacecraft commercial, getting them there, and so forth. But let's look at the history. South Africa was involved. It started in 1958. With the very first mini-track station built in Johannesburg in Esland Park. That station then moved to Hartbeespoort, where we are situated today. And there they had two stations, the one in the valley, which is a deep space instrumentation facility, and the one on the top, which was JPL. The one looked into deep space, and the one looked at the low Earth orbiting spacecraft. And to get to the moon, it took a huge amount of work, research. We had to map the moon, where we're going to land, how do we get there. So all that research was done prior to 1969. And a lot of it was done via South Africa with NASA. As NASA was built the Hartbeespoort station in 1962. And in 1969 we had this fantastic event.
Right. And I think sometimes we may or may not take it for granted the amount of work and people, or even the amount of time it takes just to make sure that the right systems are in place before, you know, a spaceship or even human beings can land on the moon. But, I mean, I read some research which shows that approximately 400,000 people, varying from scientists all the way to professional medical doctors, had to partake in the successful landing of the moon in 1969. What are some of the technical challenges that you go through when you have to launch on the moon?
Well, I wasn't involved in launching going to the moon. I'm still a bit young for that. But but just have a look at the technology or the technical advances we have to do today. We do tests months prior to launching a rocket from the US, Vandenberg, Canaveral, or Russia or India or so forth. And the tests are enormous daily. So we test and we test and we test. And the technology used must be the best technology there is. And specifically when you're taking somebody to the moon,
right,
you've got a human life on board.
Yeah. And
that plays an even bigger significant role. Not that it's least significant when you're launching to the space station, or you're putting somebody's satellite in orbit, or you're putting a satellite in a low Earth orbit, which is going to map the Earth. So the technology is extreme, the criticality thereof, and the amount of engineers, technicians, and staff on the ground to be able to pull something off like this is huge. And I think it's a top of the technology chain. Everything flows from there.
Right.
I mean, it's rockets, aeroplanes, cars. So the technology comes down, and all the technology that was ever developed for rockets, for spacecraft, for satellites, end of the day gets used in the stuff you use locally, like your PC, your laptop, your cell phone. So the development is not only for space. It filters down to the ground at the end of the day.
Right. Then let's then talk about this very same technology in 2019. We've just heard it from a clip there from Sir Richard Branson saying that Virgin Atlantic has been working for the past 14 years to ensure that as soon as next year, regular people can visit space. Is this where we are as well as South Africans in as far as eNCA is concerned?
No, eNCA is not yet there taking people to outer space. However, eNCA has the ability, via its ground stations, to track and bring the communication back from the spacecrafts. So what we tend to do in South Africa at the ground station where I'm part of is to ensure that the rocket, the second stage and the third stage of the rocket, when it releases the satellite, is tracked and make sure everything is nominal. So we'll do the same for a human space flight. We will track the vehicle, make sure that all the engines and everything is nominal on that vehicle prior to it taking off and coming back to Earth.
Yeah. And just recently, unfortunately, I know that within your industry, Manhla Maseko passed away, who would have been the first black African man, to go into space. Clearly, there are still, aspirations, since at least Mark Shuttleworth, to have more South Africans, more Africans visiting space.
It's everybody's dream to go to space.
Yeah.
And if you ask me tomorrow, I'll be on the first flight. So yes, it's everybody's aspiration. And that very first man that stepped on the moon put that aspiration in every young kid's mind today. Specifically when we bring school children to Hartbeespoort and we show them what we do and how we launch rockets and how you can see the inspiration. You can see the want to go to the moon. So yes, I think it inspires a nation.
Yeah, well, indeed, Raoul, thank you so much for also coming right here to the Newsnight Bulletin. Well, as you can see with visuals there coming on behind, you can see these are just live visuals at the moment. 50 years ago, exactly today, the moon landing anniversary celebrated.
The Soyuz traveling almost 3,000 miles an hour, 15 miles in altitude, 10 miles downrange from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. 1 minute 45 seconds after launch. All structural parameters reported to be in excellent shape. A good view inside MS-13. Alexander Skvortsov at the bottom of your screen. At the top of your screen, Luca Parmitano as we stand by for first stage separation.
Yes, the jettison is confirmed.
First stage separation confirmed.
Confirmed. Third stage separation is confirmed. Affirmative.